Hello, I'm Toilet Vodka, and welcome back to the second installment of the Grounded tutorial series where you're going to level up your Grounded gameplay. Today we're going to cover advanced water management, more weapons and armor, upgrades using the smithing station, some more intermediate level combat experience, and all of the things that you're going to want and need to know in order to get to the Hedge Lab, tackle your first spiders, and do everything beyond. Just like the last video, there are some tips and tricks interspersed throughout, so pay attention for those, and also like and subscribe to the channel. Let's hit it. Now, as I promised in the last video, which you can find in the description below, we're going to tackle some of the food and water management issues. Really, what we're going to focus on more is water. Food management is a lot easier than you might think. We will get into that as well, but water management is arguably the more important of the two, because you'll find yourself thirsty more often than hungry in the game. My biggest issue with the early game water management is essentially that you continue to have to track down blades of grass that have water hanging from them in order to get fresh water. That's really annoying. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get a shovel, kill you some grubs, make some rope, and then make a canteen. Once you got a canteen made, then you can just scoop the water up after you hit it off of the blade of grass, and you can store actually 2 droplets of water in there, and then you can just carry it with you for easy sipping later on. Next up, you're going to want to create a water container. So you're going to crack open some acorns, grab a few crude ropes, some clover leaves. You'll need these for later as well, so maybe grab a few stacks, and then build you the water container. In order to fill the water container, you'll have to fill your canteen and then empty the droplets into it. Make note that canteens can contain liquid that isn't water, so if you have a chance, store some juice drops or soda drops in there so that you can also restore some food in addition to water. Next up, we have a bit of a complex chain of things that we have to complete. Our ultimate goal is to create/craft a dew collector. In order to craft a dew collector, you're going to need some silk, which requires a spinning wheel. And in order to create the spinning wheel, we need clay. So we have to get a few ingredients first before we can make the dew collector. You can find clay rocks inside puddles of water. Generally, any standing puddle of water that isn't the pond itself will do just fine. You just search around for them. You'll eventually find some little spots of clay where you can harvest with your shovel, and then you'll pick up enough pieces. You don't need a ton of clay, so just a few of them should be fine. Once you have your spinning wheel built, you'll need a few web fibers, and you can throw them in the spinning wheel, just leave it for a while, and eventually out will come some silk rope. It does take some time to craft, so you just have to let it run for a while. Great tip here, also put all of the web fibers that you can inside the spinning wheel before you go to bed. When you wake up, all of it will be made into silk. Analyzing the silk will give you the recipe that you need for the dew collector, but also, and more importantly, it'll give you a bunch of recipes for level 2 weapons, which we will discuss later as well. Next on your quest to quenching your thirst is to chop down some dandelions. You can do this with a level 1 axe. You'll need weed stems, which come from dandelions, in order to craft the dew collector. And the dew collector is pretty much the last step in your thirst management for pretty much the rest of the game, especially if you're doing a solo playthrough. If you're playing through with multiple people, you will likely need several dew collectors, but if you're just playing by yourself, you will only need the one. The dandelion tufts that come off of the top will serve as gliders for when you start jumping off of very high places. Trust me, you will probably want to use them later. For now, maybe just pick them up and hold on to them, or just grab them when you need them. I will say that you should probably have one for the Hedge Lab. It takes 6 weed stems in order to build the dew collector, which is a bit awkward because without the ant armor, you can only carry 5 at a time. We'll get into the ant armor a bit later as well, but just make sure that you have 6 with you in order to build the dew collector. Once the dew collector is built, you're in a great place because now it will passively harvest dewdrops, and you can have them always ready at your base and continue filling your water collector, and you don't have to go anywhere to do it. Something that I missed in the last video, and I definitely should cover in this one, is trail markers. Trail markers will help you identify places of interest. They're pretty easy to craft. You can drop them just about anywhere. They also have customizable icons and colors so that you can identify on the map exactly how far you are from your trail marker and what trail marker you're headed towards. Very useful system for identifying places on the map. What I also should have mentioned in the last video is the sprig bow, which you will definitely need. If you want to find gnat fuzz, you can find it at the lamppost next to the base, also by the oak tree. Best time is at night, and if you need thistle needles, you can find them at the thistle plant, which is also not that far from the base that I had you build. And then get your crafting resources together and build the bow and arrows. Also a good idea to make sure that you have enough mite fuzz to craft the arrows. Mite fuzz is needed for a lot of stuff, including building arrows. And what I like using the bow for is nailing aphids as part of your hunger management strategy and also for crafting materials. I mentioned in the last video that you should pick up all the quartzite you can find, but I didn't really explain why. Here's one reason. Once you research quartzite, you're going to come up with a new recipe for the repair tool. As you're using weapons and armor, at some point they're going to wear down and you will have to repair them. The repair for the pebblet, at least weapons and a lot of weapons, requires quartzite, so that's your first use. Your second use of quartzite is actually going to come in the form of the smithing station, which I mentioned you should research at the end of the last video. The smithing station itself will cost some quartzite to build, but also you're going to be doing weapon upgrades through the smithing station, and the weapon upgrades will all cost quartzite also. All of your weapon upgrades can be upgraded to level 5 before they require a different material, a quartzite slab. Each level will double the amount of quartzite that you need, up to 16, I believe, for level 5. So when you have multiple weapons to upgrade, it'll end up costing you a ton of quartzite. Similarly, if you're trying to upgrade your armor, you will have to craft grub leather plates, which are constructed from grub leather. You're going to be digging up a lot of grubs and putting them into a grinder, which you can also craft. So in short, maybe you should spend a day in-game each grinding quartzite and grub leather so that you've got some on hand. Something else to watch out for is when you go digging for grubs, sometimes, just like you'll see here, you'll pull out a larva instead. Larva can be somewhat dangerous early game enemies, especially without proper weapons and armor, so be on the lookout for those. Make sure to master your perfect block as soon as you can, and make sure that you're checking your health before you start an engagement like this to make sure that you don't end up pushing up lichens like I did. In order to craft the grinder, you're also going to need weed stems, acorn shells, flower petals, and red ant parts. The only thing that we haven't found so far is the flower petal, which you can actually find also relatively close to the base that you've set up here if you're on top of the flower garden. You will have to narrowly avoid some mosquitoes and some spiders, but if you pass directly through the middle of the two sets of plants, you shouldn't have to do too much fighting. After you got that, build your grinder and throw some grub leather in to make scraps. And you remember earlier when I said that we were going to have to bust open some more acorns? Now's the time. Time for acorn to shine, baby. So what you need acorns for in this case is acorn armor. We're going to get into talking about armors, different armor set bonuses, level 2 weapons just a little bit. We're going to touch on them. Not really going to cover them in depth in this video. We'll get to that in the next video. Acorns, acorn tops, and even acorn bits are all generally useful, so always nice to have on hand. Once you're done busting nuts, about 5 should do it so that you can build the acorn armor set. You're also going to want some mite fuzz, which can be found on lawn mites. My favorite location is next to the laser beam, relatively close to the beginning of the game. That's my favorite place to get them. There are a ton of lawn mites there. Once you've got everything that you need, you'll craft your entire set of acorn armor. And the acorn armor is my favorite early game set because even though it is heavy armor, it'll allow you to take a ton of damage, which you're going to need because you have to learn how to perfect block. I like to learn perfect blocking personally by whacking some ants in the old anthill right next to the base. This is because when you attack one ant, any other ants that are nearby will start attacking you, and you can aggro a few of them at a time. It'll teach you how to deal with multiple enemies at once and also how to time your blocks because enemies will generally telegraph their attacks. So when you see an ant or any other insect winding up for an attack, you get a feel for when to precisely time your block so that it doesn't deal any damage to you. And you'll learn the different indicators for a regular block and a perfect block, but also this is a good demonstration for the stun effect that you can get when hitting things with your hammer. Also, once you get into the anthill proper, you're going to start running into these soldier ants. These are going to be your first sort of foray into more difficult enemies. Especially when you get into bigger enemies like spiders later on. They're going to be a bit more daunting, so taking on these soldier ants can be a good entry-level challenge to some of the bigger bugs that you can find in the yard. And I just think that the anthill is a really good primer to later stage combat in the game. I also think that it's a good idea while you're here to once again pick up all the quartzite that you can find. There's quite a bit of quartzite in the tunnel, as well as another scab. So once you get to the end of the tunnel and you've beaten all of the ants in there, you will find a scab. Also, researching the ant parts that you get while you're in there will give you your first unlock for tier 2 weapon, which is the red ant club. You can choose whether you want to make this or not. I don't recommend it, just because you already have the hammer, and the hammer does mostly the same damage. You probably got it upgraded, and you're going to get better weapons later on. It's also worth taking some time to get a look at your mutations. I love using Natural Explorer, Ant Annihilator, especially for fighting ants, and Smasher, which is what you use your hammer for. But take a look and see which ones work for you. And with all of that, you should be prepared to tackle the Hedge Lab and also tackle your first spiders. Once you've completed the Anthill and you've gotten a little bit of combat experience, built your water, and done everything else that I've mentioned in this guide, you're ready to go. You're ready for the mid game and to keep things moving. So if you want to see the Hedge Lab, be sure to check in for my next guide. And as always, thank you for being here. Like and subscribe to the channel.